I made a decision that I will show you and I will prove you wrong. And that decision cost me a lot for many, many years. When we're stressed, we often resort to the lowest common denominator of behavior that we grew up with. The only way you can scale a business is to be delegating. The happiest person in the room is always the most flexible.
You are in for such an exciting conversation today with Dorothy Andreas. I met Dorothy just a couple of months ago when she attended my 5-day Launch Your Podcast challenge. And what an amazing and inspiring woman. So let me introduce you to Dorothy. At the age of 19, Dorothy Andreas sold her car, left college, and bought a business. Over the next 4 decades, Dorothy started and scaled 9 companies, employing over 1,000 people and winning over 80 awards for business excellence. Her businesses represented the beauty, hospitality, technology, importing, and distribution industries. Her innovative introduction of online gift cards decades ago transformed the way business is done in the beauty industry. In 2018, Dorothy formed Streamline Success Consulting. Her entrepreneurial clients scale their endeavors to 7 figures, often in less than 12 months, by implementing strong business growth systems and mindset transformation. While building her companies and raising 2 young sons, mostly as a single mother, she also served in leadership capacity on several boards of governance, and she is most proud of her work with domestic violence and cancer care facilities. Today, Dorothy is a business growth consultant, 3-time international bestselling author, keynote speaker, wife, mother, and a lifelong learner. So please welcome Dorothy Andreas to the show. Hi, Dorothy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Teri. An honor to be here and speak with you.
So I want to go back to the beginning for you because you started your first business at a very young age, which is, not many people do that. So what inspired you to start your first business and so young?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't my plan. I went to a VOTech school during high school, got my cosmetology license and my teaching license. And I was working 3 part-time jobs to put myself through college to become accredited and certified as a teacher so that I could teach in a public system because you got paid more really than teaching it for a
Right.
private school. And while I was, working 3 jobs and going to night school, it was a grind. I had 0 financial or family support around this endeavor. A hair salon in our community came up for sale. So this was 1980. There were no programs for young women in business or women in business at that time. Up until 1979, you could still be fired for being pregnant at work. So it was like, back in the wilderness kind of days. And I was working really hard, and it was a struggle. And I heard about this hair salon, and I thought, what if I owned my own business? I wouldn't have to do any of this anymore. I had no idea what I was doing. I made an appointment to go meet with the woman who was selling the salon, and she said, aren't you really young to be here by yourself? And I said, well, I'm 19. Like that meant something. And she said, well, where are you going to get the money? Are your parents going to give it to you? And I said, no, but I own my car. I've been working for many years and I own my car. I could sell my car and get the money. And I had to negotiate her down $1,000. She wanted $5,000. I knew I could come up with $4,000. And I bought this little hair salon called Her Majesty Hair Salon. And Teri, the first day there, I didn't know what I didn't know. I'm like,
Yeah.
I knew how to do my skill. And I think this is something really important for so many people who start business. I knew I was really good. I'd been competitive with hairstyling. I was winning awards. So I knew I was good at my craft, but I had no idea how to run a business. And I had no money to learn how, and there were very few resources. So the very first day, the first client went to check out and she handed me a $20 bill. And I didn't even have change. Like I didn't even know that I needed to have change in the register. And I could feel my face flush. And she said, well, honey, it's okay. I'll see you next week. This is when women used to come in on a weekly basis, right? And I called my mom and said, hey, could you please bring me $20 in change? I forgot to get change. And as I was walking from my desk back over to the next client who's sitting in the chair, I remember this like it was yesterday, thinking to myself, I'm going to sink or swim, and I'm not going to let myself sink.
Wow. I just
Yeah.
got goosebumps. Like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Terry, there's one more piece to this story, and this is really pivotal in my journey. The day that I came home from meeting with this woman, I called my parents into the living room and said, Dad, I need your help. I need to sell my car in 7 days. I just signed a contract. I'm going to buy this hair salon up the street, and I need to have her paid in 7 days. And my dad put his hands in his pocket and he looked at me and said, but you'll never be smart enough to run a business. And I don't want to be a part of watching you fail. And in that moment,
Wow.
I made a decision, not consciously, but I made a decision. First of all, if you know that I was swearing profanely in my head, but I made a decision that I will show you and I will prove you wrong. And that decision cost me a lot for many, many years because I was terrified to let anybody know. I didn't really know what the heck I was doing. Yeah.
Wow, that's so powerful. And so how did that evolve for you? So you have the business now and you're sort of learning trial by fire, figuring it out as you go. And what happened next? Where did that take you?
Well, I realized that I was working a lot of hours. I mean, I was putting 10 and 12-hour days in because, after work, I'd like want to clean everything and really sort of those first couple of months shifting it, making decorative changes and things like that. And I could only do as much as I was generating an income like that week.
Right.
So I realized that the only information that I had available to me other than magazines at the time, like, there were two monthly magazines in my space. So I had to wait for them to come out and I would read them from cover to cover on the day they arrived, was I had clients who sat in my chair every 30 minutes. And these were clients who had a lot of experience. So I started asking my clients, hey, I have to interview somebody because I need to hire an assistant and I've never done an interview before. Now here I am. I'm this 19-year-old kid, right? They want to see you
Yeah.
win. And, have you ever interviewed somebody? What kind of questions should I be asking? So I used the resource that I had, the clients in my chair, to answer my questions. And that was a win. That was a win because I didn't want to be gossipy at work. I
Yep.
wasn't into the soap opera thing that was like everybody was watching at the time. So it was really, it was a nice way to do it. But I literally would lie in bed at night and calculate how many haircuts do I need to do this week to be able to pay the water bill, the utility bill, the rent, buy supplies? I wasn't even factoring in that I should get paid as I took whatever was left. And then I think the other thing is I really approached this as if I'm a client, like I would literally walk in because I didn't know. I mean, I'm making it up as I go and I can't let anybody know that I'm terrified inside. I would open
Right.
the door as if I were a client and I would look around and think, how does it feel? How does it feel when I approach the desk? How does it feel when I'm taken back to be shampooed? How does it feel when I'm put in the chair that I'm going to be cutting their hair? And so really looking at it from that perspective, I think gave me, it was like customer service oriented. And that
Yeah.
I really saw feedback wise, it felt right. People were really nice. People were really, really nice. And my clients, I was saying to them, hey, if you see me doing anything that like, if I'm doing something wrong or the wrong way, please let me know. And
Yeah.
that was good. But I couldn't let my parents know that that's how terrified I was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. And so looking back at that time in your life with all the knowledge and the wisdom that you have now, are there things you would have done differently?
Um, v- a couple years in, I met my first husband. We had our first baby. It was very stressful. It was very stressful. And as stress was coming into life, I lost that first business in a fire. Learned
Yeah.
that I was underinsured. One of my friends lived in
Wow.
the same building. We went all through school together. She unfortunately perished in the fire. Very devastating. Before I met my first husband, I was in a pretty crummy relationship, just looking for love. I would have loved myself more than that. There's the personal side and the professional side. But when my first husband and I got married and we had our first baby, it was really stressful. And at that point, I remember holding him and just thinking, I want more for you than what I had. And so I decided that I was going to dig my heels in and work harder. And I started accessing support through professional product companies. Professional hair products were just coming onto the scene then. Nexus and Paul Mitchell and Redken, and I'm really dating myself with some of these names. But they were offering some education. And so I was exposing myself to education and soaking it up. And it was a stressful time in our marriage. And I think this is an important thing for so many people, and especially founders, that when we're stressed, we often tend unknowingly to resort to the lowest common denominator of behavior that we grew up with. The things that we hated, we find ourselves doing. The behaviors that we really didn't like about our parents, we're emulating them somehow, thinking that that's what we know to do. And I think I would have found somebody early to talk through therapy or a coach early. I didn't find my first coach until I was 26 years old. And
Okay.
yeah, how I even found, and at this point, I had now sold that second business that I opened after the fire and opened the first day spa concept in the Pittsburgh region. This is back in the day when people would stand on the sidewalk, look at the sign and say, "What's a day spa?"
Wow.
The word spa wasn't in our vocabulary yet.
Wow.
Yeah, but I was
Amazing.
reading about it. It was happening in Europe, and I thought, well, I could do this by offering these additional services. But
Yeah.
it was just, those early years were bumpy, lack of self-confidence, fear, just wanting to be loved, wanting to be acknowledged, wanting somebody to pat me on the back, like just wanting somebody to pat me on the back and say,
Yeah.
"You're doing okay." And,
Yeah.
I just went looking in the wrong places for it. I wish I would have known that sooner. But, I had some friends who had some very successful businesses. And the one thing they had in common was they were all working with performance coaches. And I thought, well,
Yeah.
I could do this. So I'm introduced to, I was also got very actively involved in landmark education at the time and
Oh, yeah.
participated for
Yeah.
many years with Landmark, which was wonderful, very pivotal for me in personal development. But I met a coach there, and when he told me his fee, I thought, that's more than my monthly mortgage payment. Now, by this time, my husband and I are
Right.
separated, and I'm living in my own house with a baby and paying my own mortgage payment. But immediately, I saw a difference, that this is somebody who is really shortcutting my learning curve
Hmm.
by just helping me get clear on what it is I really want to produce in the next
Yeah.
7 days, in the next 30 days, in the next 90 days, in the next year. And that sense of clarity and somebody who was just there kind of holding my hand and showing me the way was absolutely, since that point, I've always worked with a coach or in a coaching program.
Wow. So just make sure that I get this straight. So by 26 at this point, or like by the
Mhm.
time you were 26, you'd had two
Third
businesses
business.
already. You're on your third
I'm
business.
on my third business.
You'd been
Yeah.
through losing a business in a fire, married with a
Hmm.
baby.
Hmm.
That's a lot
Separated.
before 26, and then separated. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Was a I didn't I mean, you don't know, you're in it.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
know. The crummy relationship that I talked about before I met my husband was a couple of years in a very abusive relationship, and I didn't know how to get out until one day I just said, "I'm out. I'm out." I called my brother who lived in a different state and said, "If I flew into your city tonight, can you pick me up at the airport? I need to end this." And my whole family was just thrilled. But again, we find our way to these things because we're looking for love, and they're not always ideal for us. So it was a lot. And I look back at that time and I think, what was the driving force? Like
Yeah.
what what kept me going? What kept me from
Yeah.
turning into turning to drugs or alcohol? It was, I think there were two things that I had that were really life-saving for me. One was I had my own business to go work in, and it was so gratifying. The better I got, the more refined I made the business, the more systems and processes I put in place, the more the business was growing. And that was incredibly gratifying and self rewarding to me. And the other thing is, I had a very strong sense of faith. And
Wow.
I would just pray very faithfully many times a day, like, God, just guide me on
Yeah.
the path. And that, I think those two things, my escape, my addiction was business, and
Mhm.
my crutch was my faith.
Amazing. That's so inspiring to hear, and
Thank you.
how much you overcame in such an early pivotal part of your life, where I think back to when I was 26 and what was I doing? I think I was still a struggling actor. I was like, I had met my now husband, but I mean, owning a business was not even on my radar yet. Like, it was when I think of myself at 26, I feel like I was still very much a baby myself. So thinking of how much you accomplished and how much you also overcame by that point in your life is just inspiring, really.
I mean, really, thank you. The time, I was just getting through the day. It was like
Hmm.
survival, how soon can I be done working so I can go home and take care of my baby? And
Yeah,
then is my baby taken care of properly so that I can go to work? And I was very grateful that I had my mother, a mother-in-law, and a great aunt who were able to help me with the child care. And even though my
good.
husband and I were separated, I still maintained a good relationship with his family. And to this day, we got back together. We had another child, and I'm now a grandmother
Wow.
for the first time.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, but we've stayed very closely knit together for the sake of our
Mhm.
children, over the decades.
Wow.
Yeah, when you think about it, my dad died when I was 21. So, I opened this business when I'm
Wow.
19. He didn't get to see what I was able to go on and create in my life.
Hmm.
When he died and I was 21, I was the youngest child. I was the only unmarried child. And I was, living with his boyfriend at the time. And was bouncing back and forth between my mother's house and his house. My mother, was struggling a little bit financially. So I started paying her mortgage payment. I used to have a joke. I cut hair all day. I come home and I cut the grass in the afternoon. And then I go out with my friends and cut the rug at night. It was just, it's like all of a sudden, at 21, I'm paying the mortgage payment for my mother's house. And like, it never occurred to me that my older siblings should have stepped in and helped me with that. But
Yeah.
they didn't. And somehow I just believed this is my responsibility. Living that kind of a way also creates a problem for anybody who's familiar with the Enneagram. I'm a 2 on the Enneagram, right? The helper. That I believe
Okay.
that the more I help you, the more you love me. And I really entrenched that belief in those early years in business. Like, here, let me take care of your bills and
Right.
you'll love me. And those are,
Wow.
talking about the lessons we wish we could go back.
Hmm.
I had to work through all of that. And I'm being very vulnerable with you right now, Terry, but I think that
Yeah.
so many founders deal with similar maybe not the exact same scenario, but the same kinds of concerns. Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing? There's a reason we all turn to building a business.
Absolutely. And it's, as I'm listening to you share that, it's interesting to me because I can see how, on one hand, having that in you, that belief that if I help you enough, you'll love me, having that, I could see how, on one hand, that would drive a lot of success in your business and make you so good at what you do. And on the other hand, be so destructive for you personally. How
Yeah.
did you overcome that? How did you find your way through
Support,
it?
lots of support. Like I said, I was almost always working with a coach and in therapy for many, many years, just trying to understand generational patterns. And why do I make the
Yeah.
choices that I do? Why do I attract certain people into my life? Why do I have no interest in other people in my life? If I'm the one in common with every situation in my life, then it's all beginning with me. And really, working really hard in Landmark, which is all self development, while I'm working with a therapist, while
Yeah.
I'm working with a coach. I mean, I was really immersing myself in this. I don't want to be making mistakes. Not that I wanted to be perfect. That wasn't it at all. I don't want to be doing things that I don't feel proud of. I don't want to be
Okay.
attracting people that create more of a problem or a mess for me. And the only way any of us could overcome that is to see our own patterns and how we do it. And that's a lot of what I coach on today when I work
Yeah.
with entrepreneurs is let's look at your patterns, both in business and personally.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, so speaking of your coaching, many of your clients scale to seven figures and in just like in under a year, which is astonishing. So, what are the common mistakes that you would say that your clients are making before they come to see you? What are some of the problems and challenges they come with?
Much like me, they're very good at what they do. And they were working for somebody else, whatever the industry. I started out actually, I didn't even start out in the beauty industry, but have a lot of clients from the industry who are, really out there thriving right now. But I work with
Yeah.
all industries right now. The range is pretty interesting and fascinating of who
Yeah.
I'm working with. I typically work with 4 to 5 clients at a time. I've worked with
Nice.
more at a time before, and it was really physically hard on me. I felt like I was sitting at the desk all day long because it's all virtual these days. But much like me, they knew how to do something really well, but they didn't exactly know how to run a business, or they didn't know how to be a boss. They didn't know how to do book work. They didn't know how to get their taxes paid. So almost all
Right.
the time when they find me, and it's either by a referral or they see me speak or they've read one of my books or they've been in a group where I've done something, and there's tax issues. They're
Hmm.
exhausted, they're overwhelmed, and they're feeling like it's never going to get easier. And we start right away, like right away. And it took a couple of years when I started the consulting practice. I had started 9 companies. When I started the consulting practice, I wanted to help everybody. Like
Hmm.
bring me your issue and let me work through it with you. And then I had to get really more selective for my time, and so that I could really make more of an impact with people who I do work with. So my discovery questions got really deep. Like it takes 7 days
Yeah.
for somebody to answer my discovery call questions before I even get on the call with them.
Oh,
Like, I will say, I don't want this back for 7 days, and I want you to think deeply. It's pretty deep, and I can tell when I get that back. This is a person, I mean, I use this tongue in cheek, but like maniacs like me, right? Who is so driven that they are willing to get themselves out of their own way to grow a business and take it out of their head and put it into a process and a system that allows them to scale and not feel like they've lost something if the whole business doesn't revolve around them. Because the only way you can scale a business is to be delegating. And
right.
so, when somebody opens a business, they believe it's all about them. And that need to delegate is paramount to being able to scale. And once we get people confident that it's still their business and they're still in charge, but other people get to do the things that
Yeah.
the other people do better than the owner does with accountability, it really starts to explode. And it's very exciting to see it happen.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because that delegation piece, I know I've struggled with that. I know a lot of my clients have struggled with it. It's a hard shift to make from being, I'm the solopreneur, it's my business, to now I'm going to trust someone else to do something.
Yes.
What are some steps that you take with your clients to help them with that transition into now being like really stepping more into a CEO role instead of the person who's doing everything?
One of the things we start doing early on, we're doing personal mindset work. I found that there are really 3 components to scaling a business. There is the mindset piece, there's the systems piece, and there's the support piece. And
Okay.
as we start to go through sort of deconstructing their business and how things work, we're looking at what really works. And let's get this down in writing. Let's get this in a standard operating procedure book or a policy and procedure book. Let's start to
Yeah.
really map out. And for me, it started with, I was still behind the chair cutting and coloring hair for the first 15 years of having businesses, that my staff would come over while I was taking care of a client and ask me a question. Hey, I forget how to do a refund on a credit card, or I forget how to cancel
Right.
a credit card. I forget how to change the toner in the printer. And it was an interruption on the very sacred time that the client in my chair was paying me for. Like
Yeah.
to me, that's sacred time. You pay for that time. That's your time in my chair. That's your 30 minutes to come and have it be a wonderful experience for you, not to hear me talking to my staff about how to change the toner in the printer. So I
Yeah.
started just writing down answers to the questions I was getting asked the most. And it started out as a 1-page document. And I went to the staff and I mean, this sounds so simple, but so few people know to even do this. So I went to my staff and I said, hey, these are the questions you're asking me the most. I've put the instructions, like there's 10 questions you ask me every day. I've written the instructions out. It's hanging back in the break room. Go there before you come to me because you can't interrupt me when I'm with a client.
Yeah.
And I get it. Sometimes there's an emergency, like, hey, this is back when we used to like hand slide the credit cards. And if the,
Yeah.
thing jammed or whatever, but that 1-page 10 Q&A sheet evolved over the years into a 64-page document that, Teri, I tell
Uh,
you, each page in that document came from things that didn't go right in the business and we had to fix them. And then we created a process around it, and each page, I say, was a $10,000 mistake. And
yeah.
yeah, they've sold multiple businesses now, and most of them still operate with those same policy and procedures that were put in place, to make things smoother. So that's really what I do with the clients is we work on their mindset to get them
Okay.
comfortable that they can step back, they can delegate.
Mhm.
how to instantly resolve conflict. My second book is Conflict Revelation. That book is
Yeah.
there because every business manages conflict, and high turnover in business comes at a really high cost. I was very fortunate that I kept my staff for decades and decades.
Wow.
And that was because we figured out how to communicate in a way that served everybody. So, I'm working with them I'm working with clients with that on the personal side.
Yeah.
We're also looking at marketing. How can you be having a broader reach, but how can we look at really improving the internal operations of your business so that you want to build this business so it can run without you needing to be there day to day?
And you've talked about how, you're working on the mindset and the business. Why is mindset non-negotiable for you for business growth?
I think it's from my own experience and everybody I know. I mean, over the years,
Hmm.
then women's groups developed. And for many years, I was fortunate to belong to an organization called Women Presidents Organization, where it was a peer to peer
Nice.
support group, a really nice global, and I belong to a local chapter, and we all have the same issues. We all feel overwhelmed. We're all taking care of children or we're taking care of parents. We're all dealing whatever the business is, whether you make water bottles or you cut hair or you have an online practice, right? We're all
Yeah.
dealing with human issues, and how we deal with those human issues. We think everybody deals like us at a certain level. And when we are able to understand and accept ourselves enough to stand there and hold space for what's going on in the mind of the other person, it's like a flexibility thing. And the happiest person in the room is always the most flexible. The person who digs their heels in. And often when I start working with somebody, like I have a very specific process. Here's the first thing when we get in the meeting, in the session, on the call, however we're meeting, it's always the same questions right up front. There's like an order, and then it's free form conversation after that. But I will have clients who are really triggered. My first question is always, what are you most proud of since the last time we met? And there are people who will say, I hate that word proud. Well, let's dig in there. Let's dig
Yeah.
in. What does being proud of yourself mean to you? And it always comes from childhood stuff. So, I make it very clear I'm not a psychologist. I am only licensed in cosmetology teaching, and that's it. But I've spent decades, I really went on that self development path when I turned 27 years old and have spent my life understanding,
Yeah.
studying human behavior. It's fascinating to me. So that mindset,
Absolutely.
yeah, that mindset piece is really it. Why we do the things we do.
You help your clients overcome fear of visibility, fear of failure, fear of success. What are some tips that you could give the audience today who might be experiencing some of those fears? How do you navigate that?
Oh, well, often if we're the leader of the business, we're going to be speaking. We're going to be speaking in front of our
Yeah.
clients. We're going to be speaking in front of an audience, in front of our staff. We're going to be speaking. And for some people, that's really terrifying. A friend of mine and I, several years ago, started a workshop called Smart Women Speak Up. It's really fun.
Yeah.
And it is crazy how if a woman is in the front of the room, and we didn't really know this until we started this workshop, that, is my hair right? Are my clothes
Mhm.
right? What are they thinking about me? Is my voice right? Do I like my voice? So I really, for that piece of it, I tell people just to practice. And, most of the
Yeah.
people that I'm working with right now are going to be at some point going live on the internet doing something in the future, whether it's just promoting their business or connecting or whatever. And so I will have them practice, like, start with me. I want you to send me a video. I want you to record a
Nice.
30-second video and tell me about your day. Now I want you to go on Instagram and just 30 seconds, just talk about a problem you're having in your day that you've solved. And, eh,
Yeah.
and just do that every day. Just do that every day. And it very quickly gets people over it. So that's the visibility piece of it. There's often, for a founder, if they've got a family, they're shortcutting somewhere. They're either not practicing great self-care, their family's being shortchanged, their kids aren't really getting their parent, and
Yeah.
kids catch that behavior. And so if you come home from work every day and you are moaning and groaning about work, what are your kids going to grow up and think about work? They're going to think it's
Mhm.
bad. They're going to not think it's great.
Yeah,
Same
right.
thing. Yeah, right. I mean, I teach a money mindset course, but it really came out of a time management course for founders that I started teaching in 1995 based on 5 key areas. And this is so important uh, for all of us. We're all humans. I start with the first principle is the physical, our physical self and our physical space. What are we doing to take care of ourself every day? And what are we doing to keep our space conducive to producing results? If your desk is a mess, chances are you're not going to be getting through your task list easily, or you're going to be wasting time looking for things. If your kitchen spice
Definitely.
rack is disorganized, you're going to waste time looking for cinnamon if it's in the back rather than if it's in the C section of your spices. I mean, we really break it down. We break it down. So, it's the
Yeah.
physical piece. The next one is relationships, our relationship with ourself, how we think and how we act, why we
Mhm.
do the things we do, getting very clear about that, what we think and believe about ourselves, and then how we relate to the people in our world. So relationships is second, spirituality is next, not necessarily religion, but what is the higher purpose that you were put on this earth for? And
Yeah, that's a big one.
yeah, and I found that in the early days, I mean, I could have a whole other story about losing a house in a fire when my kids were young, but I had to really
Wow.
look at my life. I had completely unplugged from spirituality, and that was always one of my foundational strengths. I was
Yeah.
so busy and so tired, I was forgetting that there was a higher purpose than me. So that's the third
Okay.
piece. The fourth piece is career and learning. And then lastly, it's money. And in teaching that course, nobody was ever late or nobody ever missed the money session of that course. And I thought, okay,
Interesting.
there's something here. So it led me to start teaching a course called Money Mindset Moves. And it's really deconstructing the generational patterns of what money means to you, why you're afraid to make it,
Wow.
for how you manage it, how you attract it, how you repel it. And
Uh,
really fun, really, really fun. It was so much
yeah.
fun. Terry, this is October 1st is going to be my 45th anniversary of being in business. And I do not feel like I've worked one day in my life because and I've worked hard, like hard
Yeah.
and long. It's been absolutely the biggest blessing of my life that I never feel like I work. All my
That's
friends are out
incredible.
there golfing and I'm like, well, I'll golf on Monday, but I'm going to work Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday because I
I
love
love
it.
it. Yeah. How are
And
you
you
gonna
see
celebrate?
results.
Yeah.
I don't know. At 40 years, it was a fairly big celebration, like my 40th anniversary of being in business. So this is, 40, yeah, this will be 45 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
At this point, spending time with my family is so important, so important. I just got back from this
Yeah.
9 days of being able to babysit my grandson while my son and daughter-in-law were out of the country,
Oh, nice.
and it was fabulous.
Yeah.
So it's a reward for me to be able to fly across the country and be with this precious child.
Yeah. How old is he?
He's 18 months. And he knows me. Like
Nice.
he can't say Grammy yet, but they laminated one of my book covers. So it's my picture. And if they say Grammy, he picks the picture up. So I just got back from there a few days
Aw.
ago. And my daughter in law told me yesterday 3 or 4 times a day, because he doesn't have all of his words yet. So he does this little symbol that means more. And she said 3 or 4 times a day, he'll bring me your picture and he'll do that symbol. Then they FaceTime me.
That's so sweet.
I know, melt my heart, right?
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty special, and, just having more time now to be able to appreciate this baby than, when my kids were little, it's an exhaustive blur, like, "Okay, let's
That
get you bath, let's get you into bed, let's read this book, go to sleep, mommy has to do
yeah.
laundry."
Yeah.
It's a little different as a grandparent.
I bet.
Yeah,
I bet that's amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Now, you have recently launched your own podcast, Streamline Success. What inspired you to step into the podcasting space?
So it's interesting. About maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I was in Los Angeles with Joel Bauer, who is one of my mentors. I was at an event with him, and Myron Golden was in the course, and we were standing next to each other and we were doing an exercise together. And I had the mic for a few minutes, and Myron said, "Dorothy, you need to start a podcast. You have a good voice. You should be having a
You do.
podcast."
Yeah.
Thank you. I never knew that. I never really liked it. But he said, "You need to start a podcast." So I kept thinking, oh my God, the idea of a podcast sounds so overwhelming to me. And then jump ahead, I met you earlier this year, Terry, and
Yeah.
And you made it seem very manageable and very doable. And I thought, it's time. Let me try it. I'll either do it and I'll love it or I won't. And I'm still not exactly sure what I'm doing every day, but I've got several episodes out there and they're being downloaded and it's led to some speaking opportunities. And it's really exciting. And it's really based on business growth. The first month, I decided that I will do a different topic every month. And for the first 3 sessions, I'll speak alone. The fourth session, I'll bring somebody who's really had success
Nice.
in that area to get for the audience to hear them. So the first month I did overwhelm
Mhm.
for the founder, because almost everybody feels overwhelmed at some point.
Yeah.
And that just completed. And I just launched the first episode yesterday of the money mindset piece.
Nice.
And it's really good. There's some strategies in there because a lot of people aren't sure of what their value is. And, I share three exercises that you can very easily, quickly do to start to see
Nice.
how you really do have value if you're creating a product, especially if you've solved a problem for yourself and you've solved it for other people. It's a saleable product or service.
Absolutely. And I will link your show in the show notes as well. What would you say to someone who's thinking about starting a podcast, but maybe feels like the way you did, like it was overwhelming or too much? What would you say to them?
I would say to find you and invest in your course.
Well,
Truly,
thank you.
Terry. No, truly. I mean, it was like really, and it's the same thing I wanted audible versions of my 3 books. So I
Yeah.
found a guy who has a great course that's very manageable called Audiobooks Made Easy. I bought the course, I listened to it, I followed the instructions, and I was able to create and publish my own audible version of the books. So in doing I think this is one of the things that I didn't know early. And this is an important message for the audience is the things that you don't know how to do. You want to find the person who's the expert in the field, who has had tremendous success in doing what it is you believe you want to do, and align
Yeah.
yourself. I've invested over $1 million into specialized training for myself over the
Yeah.
decades. A college degree way back, in the 70s and early 80s might have cost me $75,000. That would have been nothing in terms of what I've actually invested into myself in programs to learn. And I say that because that is how I was able to go from a college dropout to building 9 businesses and now helping people quickly scale their service or practice or brick and mortar store, whatever
Yeah.
it is, up to 7 figures, is I learned from other people. So I would say for the podcast, find you, invest in your program. And I know you didn't ask me to say this. I'm
No,
saying this,
but I appreciate it.
but it's really true. It was so incredibly helpful going through that with you and following your guideline because you know what you're doing and being able
Thanks.
to follow the formula. And a formula can be replicated. And I really appreciated that. And then I was like, oh, nobody's even going to pay attention to my podcast. So, sure enough, the very first day I put it up on LinkedIn, and I don't even have like a lot of engagement on LinkedIn because I don't spend a lot of time there. The very first day I put it up, it led to a speaking engagement. Somebody reached out to
Well,
me.
amazing.
And so we never know. And I guess this is a really important thing also. You don't have to know what you're doing, but you have to take action every day. And action is what separates the doers from the dreamers. And just taking action, doing something will unfold what it is you should be doing next, or what it is you need to learn next, what it is you need to change next. But if you don't take
Yeah,
action, it doesn't happen. Often there's a saboteur archetype heavily at play if somebody's afraid to take action.
that is such great advice. Now I have a couple rapid fire questions for you if you're game.
Absolutely.
What's your favorite book to recommend?
In general, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran.
Yeah, so good.
Yes, so good. One of my favorite books. One book I have all of my clients read early on, if they haven't already, is The E-Myth
Mm.
Revisited. The E-Myth Revisited is really good. It follows a very high-end hotel and a woman who makes really good pies and wants to build a pie making business. And it shows you so much about putting systems into place. Yeah,
Cool.
those two are top of mind. And I have a list of so many. Another one,
Yeah.
because there's so much in the tech space right now, is fall in love with the problem, not the solution. by Ian. I forget his last name. He's the founder of Waze, the app
Okay.
Waze. The book is called Fall in Love with the Solution. Fall in Love with the Problem, not the solution. Really good for early
Yeah.
founders as a way to look at what they're doing.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Really
That sounds
good.
great. And what's your favorite food?
I'm pretty broad based, do low carb, low sugar, keto ish. So I like cheesy things. I like a great steak. I was a macrobiotic vegetarian for many, many years. And when I was
Wow.
pregnant with my second child, I was craving a hot dog. I was working with a nutritionist. And one day she said to me, you know what? Eat a hot dog. You're going to
Yeah.
get sick from it or it won't bother you. So I went to a deli in Pittsburgh. I went to this fabulous deli, got a hot dog. I'm, out to here pregnant, ate the hot dog, turned around and ordered a second one, and I never looked back.
Wow.
So yeah, I pretty much, I like a lot of things. I like to try new things.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Who's a celebrity you'd like to have dinner with, dead or alive?
Prince.
Good choice.
Yeah. Prolific artist.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And what is your go-to karaoke song?
Ooh, well, I think I've only done karaoke twice in my life, and there was alcohol involved. Born to Be Wild, my sister, a high school
Mm,
friend, and I did on a Thanksgiving night, like when we were in our 30s, we all met up at this place and we did Born to Be Wild because we all knew the lyrics to that. But
nice.
I had, I really love that you asked this question, Teri. There were songs that the mantra, the song represented something. So, back in the early 80s, going through the business, losing the business, going through this terribly abusive relationship, really, really ending up in the hospital from that relationship, coming out of it, finding my husband, having a child, all of that stuff. There was a Madonna song, and it's not that I'm a huge fan of Madonna or not. I mean, she was, so incredibly popular, but it was the song Over and Over. I Get Up Again Over and Over. And that song is in my playlist. And I latched on to that song because I felt like that was my mantra for many, many years. I get up again over and over. And that was really good. That was really, really good.
Yeah.
To relax, the song I love the most, it's a cantaloupe, but the cantaloupe was originally done by Herbie Hancock, but it's by a band called Us Three. Came out maybe 25, 30 years ago. Cantaloupe is a really cool vibe song, and it's the first song that
Cool.
plays in my playlist when I go out to walk every day.
Nice. I don't
Yeah.
know that one. I'm gonna have to find it. I'm
Yeah,
curious.
Cantaloupe by Us Three. Really
Yeah,
cool.
I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna check it out as soon as we're done here because now you have me curious about it. And then Jonathan Maynard was the last guest on the show, who I know that you know as well.
Yes.
And he passed along this question for you. He said, what is one thing that you found that changed your perspective in a way that you were not expecting?
When I went to my first landmark education weekend, and I saw that people saw right through my act.
Yeah.
Everybody sees right through the act that we think we so guardedly protect.
Yeah.
Some people call it the act, some people call it the mask. In Landmark, it was the act. That when I saw that and I saw how I operated in life, it caused profound change in me. And never
Oh,
expected that to happen. I thought, oh, this is going to be some cool workshop I'm going to go to. And I'm going to learn some
yeah.
stuff. And that's it. It was pivotal. That weekend was a pivotal week. And I stayed in Landmark for many, many years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's a question you would like to ask the next guest without knowing who they are?
What did you think you would be when you grew up, and how did that impact your journey?
Great question. I like that. And any final words you'd like to leave the audience with today?
I would say if there's one thing that I could say to every person out there is love and trust all parts of yourself, even the parts that weren't strong enough to get what you wanted out of life. And this really came from the lesson I learned from my father, that for many years I felt like a victim. And man, I got a lot of juice out of that victim story. Like,
Right.
woe is me. My
Yeah.
father really didn't love me. Not that he didn't love me, he didn't support me. I was as much responsible for the way that relationship went as he was from the time I was a very small child. And I never wanted to see it because it felt so comfortable to slip into this story. And
Yeah.
this really came from me looking deeply inside of myself and saying, I don't want this story anymore. This story is disempowering. And
Yeah.
so if I love the part of myself that didn't know how to get that love from my father, but I can give it to myself, I'm going to really attract way healthier people in my life. And that that in general, I think, is something that it's tough to do alone. You often need
Definitely.
a therapist, a coach, a mentor, somebody to help you see it because those things are hard to look at. But it is well worth every minute that we invest looking at those parts of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that in any way feel like a victim to anything that has ever happened to us, and we take full responsibility for loving ourselves fully and completely.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
that.
you.
And thank you so much for coming on today. This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And I know the audience is going to enjoy it as well.
Thank you so much, Teri. It truly was an honor to, I mean, you really are so well known. And to be able to speak on here is so much fun, so exciting. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. Isn't she fantastic? I just have to say, sometimes I feel so lucky that I get to interview such amazing people on my show week after week and benefit from their knowledge. And I was thinking about this after this interview with Dorothy, and while I was going through and editing and listening to it again, I was thinking about, well, how grateful I am, but also how I feel kind of spoiled that I get access to all these incredible people and these mentors. And I hope you feel the same way about listening to them as I do, because I feel so blessed to get to do this. So thank you all for being here. All of Dorothy's links are in the show notes, including her podcast, how to connect with her, how to work with her. It is all available for you. Make sure you check out what she has to offer. And I will be back with you again soon, maybe even later this week. I think this is going to be a double podcast week. So come check that out. Come back later in the week. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you always know when a new episode is available. And if you know a small business owner who should listen to this interview, make sure you send it their way. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Bye for now.